Spongebob Squarepants is a show that needs no introduction. It's pretty safe to say that anyone watching this between the ages of 15 and 25 has very fond memories of those first 3 seasons. Even as adults, the show's iconic imagery lives on through endlessly reused images and memes. However, despite the fact that it's just an accepted fact that the show is godlike, there really isn't much in the way of discussion about it. I'd like to change that by talking to you about a single episode, Squirrel Jokes, and why I personally believe it to be the smartest episode of Spongebob Squarepants. Just in case you need a reminder, the plot of Squirrel Jokes has to do with SpongeBob telling racist jokes at Sandy's expense and learning about the moral and social implications of his comedy. Okay, that sounds a little complicated, so let me back up a little and remind you about what happens. The episode begins with a comedy festival at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob goes on stage and starts floundering until he makes flat-out racist jokes about Sandy.
Did you ever notice how big squirrels' teeth are?
How come it takes more than one squirrel to screw in a light bulb because they're so darn stupid is stated more than once. Sandy confronts SpongeBob afterwards and he gives her the genuine response that he sees no issue with this comedy because he understands that they are simply jokes.
Yeah, I was just joking. I mean, everybody knows you're the smartest one in Bikini Bottom.
Sandy forgives him until people begin treating her differently, at which point she asks SpongeBob not to tell any more squirrel jokes.
I'm just asking you as a friend. Please lay off them squirrel jokes, okay?
SpongeBob agrees, but after a brief crisis of character decides to walk off stage. And immediately comes back in something I can only refer to as Squirrel Face. After some extended persuasion from Sandy, SpongeBob finally understands not to tell any more squirrel jokes. He walks on stage for the 3rd time and lectures the crowd about the importance of not being a bigot. Except that's not what happens. What happens is that SpongeBob walks onto stage and tells a squirrel joke.
Hey, why don't you go get a couple of your squirrel friends and we'll go change a light bulb?
He then tells a joke at his own expense before shifting the butt of the joke to everyone in the crowd. Because SpongeBob has finally learned how to tell jokes in the proper context, no longer is he just playing to the crowd's biases in order to get the cheapest, easiest laughs he can. He's now using his comedy as a way to poke fun at all parties equally. He's no longer affirming potential bigotry. He's properly explaining to everyone what he explained to Sandy a few scenes prior. We all need to laugh at ourselves sometimes. This idea of putting edgy jokes in the right context is not an old one, and real comedians have found themselves under criticism for essentially doing what SpongeBob was doing. I'm sure you all know who Larry the Cable Guy is. Well, Larry makes quite a number of pretty edgy jokes about certain minorities, Muslims, homosexuals, etc. In David Cross's damning and open letter to Larry the Cable Guy, he points out and heavily reprimands Larry's affinity to go for these low-hanging fruits to get an easy punchline.
Madder than a queer with lockjaw on Valentine's Day? I mean, that's not funny. I don't care who you are. It's just so easy. I mean, over half the planet sucks dick, so why gays? Why not truck stop whores or Hollywood starlets or housewives? Why? Because when you say queer, you get an easy laugh. End of story.
Sound familiar? But it goes beyond that. Public speakers must always be aware of making sure they don't say something they shouldn't. But comedians are in a unique position in that they can say things that shouldn't be said. It's one of the best and most important things about comedy. But sometimes, it's what you don't say that can cause the greatest impact. When you're a public speaker, or anyone that people are actually listening to, it's very important that you choose your words very wisely. One small slip from you can mean potential disaster for others. This responsibility is something you have to carry with you if you want to talk to a wide audience, and if you ignore it, then you might cause real trouble for innocent people. And while you still might not be directly at fault, and you might have had all the best intentions, there's still more you could have done to ensure it never happened in the first place. Now, you might be thinking, those are some pretty complex and heavy themes to be in a kids show, but I think it's pretty obvious that this is exactly what the writing staff were going for when they penned this episode. They could have actually probably done that corny We Are the World ending and saved themselves the hassle, but instead, they chose to treat their audience with a solid amount of respect. Those first 3 seasons of SpongeBob will always live on as a testament on how something that, is for children doesn't necessarily mean it's juvenile, or that it can't grapple with complex themes. This show for kids literally spent 11 minutes on the importance of responsibility while public speaking as well as commentating on stand-up comedy. That's a lot to do for a kids show, and going back to watch this episode again, I was honestly really impressed. All I could think of was, dang, this is the smartest episode of SpongeBob Squarepants.